Welcome back to my channel, everybody. If you're new here, I'm Claudia. I'm really excited you're here with me today because we are doing my very first Q&A video. You have asked me some amazing questions, anything from personal questions, of course, to skincare and beauty. I have them all written down right here. I also have a nice cup of tea, so get yourself some tea, some coffee, whatever it is you like to drink, and let's get right into it. As I said, you asked me some amazing questions, and I'm going to go in no particular order. The first one is from Sarah, and Sarah wants to know who influenced you the most in your life and why. And she goes on to say, that's a difficult one, so you can choose more than one person. It is kind of a difficult one, mostly because, of course, I want to focus on positive influences. However, growing up, I really didn't have too many of those. I had a lot of negative influences growing up. And so at a young age, I learned to shield myself and sort of put up a wall so not too much could penetrate and influence me. And then I became anorexic. So for about 2 decades, I walked through life, for lack of a better word, like a robot, just focused on my addiction, and really nothing could penetrate and influence me. So the first really big positive influence I can think of is actually not a person, but my dog Footsie, which is not the dog I have now, that's Sam. But Footsie was the first dog I had as an adult, and she was given to me by an ex back then when I was 30 years old. And he had rescued her from the SPCA. She had been abused and was very afraid, very skittish, and very needy. When my ex first gave me Footsie, I thought, what am I supposed to do with this little needy thing? I loved animals like crazy, but at that point I was still in the midst of my addiction and couldn't even take care of myself, so I couldn't fathom taking care of this little needy animal. She was a tiny thing, a Chihuahua pug mix. But Footsie was the biggest gift. She was instrumental to my emotional growth. She first of all taught me patience with her and then in turn with myself. And she really taught me how to love. She taught me how to love her with all her skittishness and all her imperfections, and in turn love myself with all my imperfections. So Footsie was the first big positive influence in my life when I was 30 years old. And then in my mid-30s, I took a workshop called Break Free, and if you live in California, I will link it down below because it is life-changing. We learn things that we really should learn in school about boundaries and self-esteem and assertiveness, and we went back and healed some of our old wounds. So it was another very instrumental step for my emotional growth. But the woman who teaches the workshop, her name is Janet Thomas. She's a psychologist. She was a big positive influence on me. She and what she taught, of course. And then, of course, my husband, he has been a huge positive influence on me, and he is continuing to teach me what Footsie started teaching me. And then, of course, my dog Sam. So those are the beings that have made a big positive change and have been a big positive influence on my life. The second question is from Beth, and Beth wants to know, besides sunscreen, what is your number one anti-aging product? That's an easy one. Retin-A. For me, definitely. Besides sunscreen, Retin-A. I have been using Retin-A now for 2 years, and I wish I would have started much sooner than that. But when I first started using Retin-A, I had quite a few precancerous spots come up on my forehead and my temples, and I would go to the dermatologist and he would freeze them off and a new one would pop up. So eventually he gave me a little tube, which was basically chemotherapy in a tube. And after reading the side effects, I said, no way am I putting this on my face. So I kept going back and he would freeze one off and another one would come back. And around the same time, I started using Retin-A. And within 3 months of using Retin-A, all of those spots disappeared and they have not returned. So that really showed me how Retin-A doesn't just affect the outer layer, the epidermis, but really can go deep and facilitate some change on the deeper levels of our skin. And it is really one of the few things that has been proven to not just help with new collagen production, but also help actually slow down the breakdown of collagen. So definitely Retin-A as far as a product. However, I have to say that I think nutrition, of course, is also super, super important as far as not just anti-aging, but our skin health and our overall well-being. So a nutrient-dense diet rich in antioxidants, healthy fats, omega-3s, I think is, well, if you would ask me what's more important, Retin-A or nutrient-dense diet, I would definitely say the diet, because not only does that affect our skin and makes us age more gracefully, but of course it makes us feel better overall, and only if we feel good can we go out in the world and do good. So a nutrient-dense diet, I think, is absolutely crucial for graceful aging, but as far as products, definitely Retin-A. The next question is from Melissa, and Melissa says, I would love to know if you like living in Italy, and also, do you have children? Let's answer the second question first because it's a little bit easier. No, I don't have children. I met my husband later on in life, and I will talk about that in a second because that was another question I got. But even when I was a little girl, I always knew that I did not want children. Back then it was mostly because I was really afraid I would repeat the same mistakes my parents made. But now I know it just was not part of the plan for me, and my husband also did not want children. So we don't have children. We have our little dog, Sam. She's our child. And as far as do I like living in Italy, that's a tough question. Growing up in Germany, we traveled to Italy quite a bit, and I always loved it. I loved the language and the country and the people. However, we live in Naples, and even Napolitanians will tell you that they are not Italian, but Napolitanian. There are quite a few things wrong with Naples. The mafia has had a bad influence here, and amongst other things has installed a distrust in government and authority in people, and because of that things are just falling apart. For example, many people don't pay taxes, and they don't pay taxes on their homes either. Because of that, they don't have trash pickup. So they will do one of two things. They will collect their trash, put it in their car, drive out onto the freeway, and throw it out the window. So there's trash everywhere. Big bags of trash, furniture, you name it. Or they will collect it and then burn it, which obviously is also not good for air quality or the environment. So witnessing that is really difficult for me because protecting the environment is dear to my heart. I also unfortunately witness a lot of animal abuse, and I have no patience for that. So because of those two things, I have a really hard time saying that I love living in Italy. However, I don't want you to think that Napolitanians are bad people. They're actually wonderful people. They are very loving and very giving. I just don't think that protecting the environment and treating animals the way I think they should be treated is something that is consciously thought of here. And also, it's not a very affluent area, so for a lot of people, survival is what matters. But like I said, for me, those two things are very dear to my heart, and it just makes it really hard for me to be happy when I see animals being abused or the environment being abused. However, that being said, when you go downtown Naples, there's nothing like it. It is an explosion of colors and culture and language and smells. There's nothing like it. It's a really colorful, really amazing place. And if it wasn't for the destruction of the environment, it could be absolutely gorgeous. But like I said, because of those two things, the environmental destruction and the animal abuse, I have a really hard time living here. I would be very happy living anywhere else in Italy but Naples, and I hope that I'm not offending anybody. Let's do an easy question. This one is from Stacy, and Stacy wants to know, besides dark chocolate, what are your other favorite snacks? If you have been with me for a while, you know I love my dark chocolate. I wouldn't consider it a snack, I would consider it a treat, but I eat it on a daily basis. But aside from that, I love fruit. I could eat fruit all day long, especially grapes. I consider myself to be somewhat of a grape addict, but really any fruit, bananas, apples, pomegranates. So aside from chocolate, definitely fruit. I could eat fruit all day long. Renee wants to know how I met my husband and also about my family history. I met my husband in Monterey, California. I had been living there for about 22 years, and when I met my husband, I was actually going through a divorce. I had very briefly been married to a man who was completely wrong for me, and luckily I realized it quickly enough and I divorced him. But when I met my husband, I was not looking for a relationship. I was actually quite happy, of course, once I had healed the heartbreak of the failed marriage. But I was quite happy by myself. I had my friends, I had my career, I had my dog. So I actually thought I never wanted a relationship again after what I had gone through with my ex. And when I met my husband, I was teaching at the Naval Postgraduate School in Monterey. It's a military school. I like to joke around and say I was teaching applied physics, but no, I was teaching yoga. And my husband was one of my students. I actually did not notice him at all at first. Well, I noticed him, of course, as a student. I noticed all my students. But when I teach, I'm in teacher mode, so I didn't notice how cute he actually was. But he would always come early and make sure he would get a spot right next to me and roll his mat out. And one day I saw him at the gym working out, doing some exercises I had never seen before. My friend and I were working out, and we asked him if he could show us these exercises. And he did, and as he was teaching us, I really saw him in a different light. I realized how not only very cute he was, but I really loved his demeanor. I loved how attentive he was and how much attention he was paying to detail. So I said to my friend, let's ask him if he can do this again tomorrow, and then as a thank you, we will take him out for lunch. And my friend really didn't want to. I had to talk her into it. Well, the next morning I woke up and I could barely walk because the exercises my husband showed us, I had never done them before. I called my friend and she felt the same way, and she said, I don't want to go. But I said, no, we have to. I really like this man and I want to take him for lunch afterwards. So we did. We worked out again. We took him for lunch after. It was a lovely lunch. My friend left afterwards, and my now husband and I walked through town and exchanged phone numbers. And then a couple of days later, he took me on a real date. However, on our date, I had no idea how old my husband was. And on our date, somehow we started talking about 9/11. I don't know how, but my husband said, I remember it very clearly. I had just graduated high school. And I did the math in my head and I thought, wait a minute, he was 18 when 9/11 happened. I was 32. So I did the math and I realized he was 28 and I was 42 at the time of our dinner. And I thought, this isn't going to go anywhere. Well, we have been married now for almost 9 years, together for almost 10, and I couldn't be happier. So that is how I met my husband. And as far as my family history, I actually don't quite know how to answer that. I grew up always thinking that something is not quite right. I cannot possibly be part of this family. In fact, I always thought one day they're going to tell me I'm adopted. I was sure of it, because when I would look around, it just did not feel right. So I don't very much feel connected with my family at all. I actually did not talk to my mother for 25 years for many reasons. It's a whole nother video. But just recently, her and I reconnected. And it's nice. We talk a couple times a week. And it's a bit strange because there's a lot missing. And not to sound heartless, to say that she's my mother feels very strange because she's a bit of a stranger to me. However, in my life, I've been very lucky. I've had many older women take over that role as a mother for me. So I feel very lucky that way. But I have reconnected with my mother. My dad left when I was a little girl, and he is an alcoholic. So even though we are in contact, it's really difficult to have a relationship with him because he's not an honest person and he's an addict. And then I have an older sister who I sadly never got along with growing up because just of the way we grew up. But her and I also reconnected recently. So I don't really feel that I have a family history because my family is very dysfunctional. But to me, friends have always been so much more important than family and have sort of filled that place for me that I did not have as far as a family. But like I said, I have reconnected with my mom. I talk to my dad here and there, and I have reconnected with my sister. But I really don't know, as far as family history, what else to tell you. Next, Allison wants to know, what was the turning moment that helped you fully commit to a vegan diet. I have talked about this briefly in another video, but I was actually vegan from age 17 to 30. Back then it started because I love animals like crazy, but it turned into something a bit unhealthy because of my anorexia. And so I was very, very active back then. In fact, I wanted to be a professional runner, but I had a ton of injuries. And every time I had an injury, I would go to the doctor and they would say, you need to eat some animal protein. They should have said you need to eat, period. But eventually at age 30, I broke down and I said, maybe they're right. And I started eating animals again. And of course, I started feeling better. Now I know it was just because I ate more calories and more nutrients, but I thought really that that is what I needed. I needed to eat animals. So even though really in my heart I was always wanting to be vegan, for my health, I thought I needed to eat animals. Well, then we moved to Paris, and in Paris, of course, we have grocery stores in Paris, or they have grocery stores in Paris, but we lived in an area that was sort of specialty stores. So I would have to go to the butcher. Now, when you live in the United States, you can go to the grocery store and you get a nice package of meat, never knowing where it came from. But when you go to the butcher in Europe, things have ears and eyes and hooves, and I would have to go in there basically like this. I mean, it was just heartbreaking for me every single time. And I would always get the same thing, and they actually made fun of me for it. They always said, don't you want to try something else? I said, no, just give me this. So anyways, it got to the point where it was really difficult for me. I didn't want to go to the store anymore. I didn't want to cook anymore. And one day I just said to my husband, I cannot do this anymore. I can't go and get these animals anymore. Will you try and be vegan with me? And my husband said, sure. And that was the turning point for me. Him saying, sure, just sure, let's try this. Now, if he would have given me a hard time or tried to talk me out of it, I think eventually I would have just done it on my own. But him just being so, of course, let's do this, that really made it so easy for me. And that is the day that I fully committed to becoming vegan again. And we've been vegan now for about 3.5 years, and we love it. In fact, my husband says all the time, I am so happy I'm vegan. So that was the turning point for me. I have a very sweet subscriber from the Middle East, and I'm really sorry, but I'm probably going to butcher your name. But I'm going to say it's Mitak. Again, I'm really sorry if I'm mispronouncing it. But Mitak wants to know, after microneedling, when using LED afterwards, what can be used for better results? Now, first of all, I am not a microneedling nor LED expert, so I'm just going to talk about my own experience. When I microneedle, I only cosmetic microneedle, which is 0.5 millimeters or above. When you medical microneedle, you really ideally don't want to put anything on afterwards aside from hyaluronic acid. So when I medical microneedle, I leave my skin bare, then put my LED mask on, really making sure that I sanitize it so that there's no bacteria on it, because I have some open channels now. Then I put the LED mask on, and then ideally, again, aside from hyaluronic acid, you don't want to use anything afterwards. I do after several hours. I will actually put something occlusive on. That works for me, it might not work for you. But if you cosmetic microneedle, which is about 0.2 millimeters, that really is mostly for product penetration, so you can really put anything on. So if you want to use your LED light after cosmetic microneedling, I would say put a good antioxidant serum on, a green tea serum, a vitamin C serum, something like that. But I don't think that it is necessary for good results. I think that LED after microneedling gives great results on its own. But if you wanted to do something to get even better results, like I said, for medical microneedling, I wouldn't put anything. And for cosmetic microneedling, I would use a good antioxidant serum. Next, Jana wants to know, since we always see you in sport clothes, what is your dressing style? She goes on to say that she believes that we can learn a lot about a person by the way they dress. And I read this question to my husband and he laughed. He said, that's it, you wear athletic clothing. And that's true. I basically, since I have been working in the fitness industry for half of my life, I would say 90% of the time I wear athletic clothing. I also really like dresses though. I love dresses, but they can't be too girly or foo-foo. So they still have to be somewhat athletic. and I cannot stand high heels. I do not know how to walk in them, and I have quite complicated feet. So even when I wear a dress, I will often just wear it with sneakers or Birkenstocks. And aside from that, jeans and t-shirt. For me, I have to be comfortable. If I have to decide between looking really good and being uncomfortable, or being comfortable but not looking so good, I will definitely choose the latter. Lena and Claudia want to know what my favorite hair products are. First of all, I have very low maintenance hair. I finally just got my first haircut of this year last week. I was so excited. I normally cut my hair maybe every 3 or 4 months, but because of COVID, I hadn't cut it. So last week I got my first haircut. I was super excited. But aside from cutting my hair every 3 or 4 months, I don't do anything with it. I don't color it. I don't blow dry it. I don't use any sort of tools on it. I don't use any products on it. I wash my hair. I condition it. That's it. I let it air dry. And every once in a while, I will use a deep conditioning mask. So I just have shampoo and conditioner to show you. And my favorite shampoo is this one right here by Pureology. Excuse the way it looks, it has been living in my shower for a while, but I really like Pureology. It is vegan, cruelty-free, sulfate-free. This is the Hydrate shampoo. It does a great job cleaning my hair without stripping it. And then I used to have the same conditioner, which I ran out of. I always go through conditioner quicker than shampoo. If you do as well, let me know below. But I had the purple one, and I didn't like it as much because it's minty, and I didn't quite like the feeling of the minty on my head, and it also sort of made me react along the hairline. So when I ran out of it, I replaced it with this one, and I love this one. This is also Pureology, and when I first got it, I didn't know that it was the volumizing one. However, I used it and I thought, man, my hair feels so thick and lovely. Well, it's the volumizing one, and it really works. So I love this conditioner, and I really like the shampoo as well. And like I said, I have been using this now probably for a year or so. And then maybe every second or third wash, I will also use a co-wash just to kind of mix things up. This is really inexpensive. This is by SIM. It is the coconut co-wash. It's basically a conditioner I wash my hair with. It smells really good. It's, like I said, inexpensive, and it does a really nice job actually cleaning my hair and leaving it conditioned. And then when I have a deep conditioning mask, I will use it, but I don't have any right now. I have used the Pureology deep conditioning mask and really liked it. Lena also wants to know what I love to do day to day. I am actually quite a loner. It is something that grew out of necessity. I was alone quite a bit as a child. And now as an adult, I really like my own company. I can spend hours and days by myself without ever getting bored. Well, I'm really never by myself because Sam, my dog, is always with me, and she's great company. And of course, I like spending time with my husband. I actually always say that spending time with my husband is like being by myself, but better. But whether I am with my husband or by myself, I like to be active. I love to be in nature. I love to hike and bike and run and swim and go to the beach. I am not much of a shopper, much to my best friend's dislike. Whenever she comes to visit, that's all she wants to do is go shopping, and I'm good for about an hour and that's it. Unless it's skincare, that I can shop for forever. But I don't like having a lot of stuff, so I'm not much of a shopper. So mostly I like to be active. I don't like to be around too many people too often. I'm not an antisocial person, but if I spend too much time with people, it sort of drains me, and I have to recharge by myself. And I do so by, like I said, going into nature, reading, meditating, those sort of things. Several of you asked how I ended up living in Germany, then in the United States, and now in Italy. So I was born and raised in Germany. However, just as I said earlier, that I never felt I fit into my family, I also never felt that I fit into my country. When I was 22 years old, I went on vacation to Los Angeles, and when I landed in the LA airport, I had the clearest, strongest gut feeling I had ever had in my life, and my gut told me that I was going to stay in the US. So I was supposed to stay for 2 weeks. I had enough luggage and money for 2 weeks, and in those 2 weeks I found a job and I ended up staying. Now, of course, it wasn't quite that easy. Eventually I got kicked out of the country because though I was legal always on a visa, I was not allowed to work. I came back eventually. That's a story for a whole nother video. But I then moved from Los Angeles to Monterey, where I met my husband. Shortly after we got married, we moved to Virginia, then Rhode Island, then Hawaii, then Paris, and now we live in Italy. Marina, who is a very sweet subscriber of mine from Russia, wants to know, who is the pearl of beauty for you from famous persons and why? So Marina is asking, who do I think amongst famous people is the most beautiful and why? And that's a tough one because beauty to me is so much more than what we see on the outside. Beauty to me really is how a person carries themselves, what sort of difference do they make in the world, how are they to others, to animals, to the planet. And when I look at famous people, I only see their outside appearance and what the media wants me to know about them. But if I had to pick a person just by outside appearance, I would say Robin Wright. I think she's absolutely gorgeous. However, again, I don't know anything about her aside from what the media wants me to know. So in lieu of a famous person, I am going to pick my husband because not only is he, of course, very attractive to me, but also I always tell him what a beautiful person he is. He is the most thoughtful person I know. He puts so much thought and passion and energy into everything he does, and that to me is beautiful. And then lastly, Olina wants to know about my current connections to Germany or my childhood connections, and about my connections to my Italian environment at the present. So I was talking about earlier how I'm struggling with living here in Naples. So unfortunately, I do not feel very connected to my Italian environment at the present. And since COVID, I feel even less connected, sadly. And I talked a little bit about reconnecting with my mom and talking to my dad when his addiction allows it, reconnecting with my sister. The strongest connections I have to Germany are two of my girlfriends who are like sisters to me. One of them is my friend Bernadette, who I've known since I was 6 years old and she was 7, so she's a year older than I. And she has come to visit wherever I've been in the world. And of course, I go visit her and we talk all the time via FaceTime. And then another one is my friend Sylvie, who I met a little bit later as a teenager, but still she is like a sister to me and we talk all the time. And of course, I go and visit her. So those are the strongest connections I have to Germany. And like I said, sadly, I do not feel very connected at the moment to my Italian environment. So these are all the amazing questions you had. Thank you so much for asking such good questions. And of course, if you have any more questions, leave them down below. I always love to hear from you, so anything you want to talk about, leave it down below. I also love how you're interacting with each other in the comments, so thank you for that. And thank you so much for being here. Until next time, bye.